Numerous people are saying that JT Tuimoloau needs to be more productive for Ohio State's defense, and my gut says that's exactly what he's going to do.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a Tuesday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Here on Tuesday, August 20th in the year 2024. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. The moment JT Tuimoloau committed to Ohio State, I was all in. This is one of those guys that Larry Johnson wants on the Buckeyes defensive line. He gets 3, maybe 4 years with him, puts him through the ringer, puts him to the test, goes into his lab, figures out exactly what to do with this athlete, and then you put it out there on the field, and you see that thing work to perfection. Now, sometimes it takes guys a little bit longer to be all they can be in the scarlet and gray, and JT Tuimoloau is that guy right now. He has been very good for Ohio State. Don't get me wrong, but there's a narrative out there that people are saying JT needs to be more productive. He has not done enough in the scarlet and gray, been as consistent as he needs to be for us to say, oh, he is that dude. Well, I got something to say for you. 1, he is that dude. And 2, I do believe he will be more productive for Ohio State this year. Now, they want to say, Jay, how can he be that dude and still need to be more productive? Have you watched him play football? Because my gut says you probably have watched him play once, maybe twice. Maybe you've seen the whole season. And what do you find when JT Tuimoloau is out there on the field? He is very, very productive. However, sometimes his production doesn't show up in the stat sheet. Some people watch the game and then look and see, oh, I saw the game, but the box score tells me how productive you are. And I'm going to sit up here and tell you, that's wrong. That is hashtag poor analysis. That is not what we want around here. Yes, there is a time and a place to look at a box score. But if you're a defensive lineman, a defensive end, D tackle, nose guard, whatever it might be, going to look at the box score at that position, at those positions, doesn't tell the whole story. Just like if you're a corner and you end the game with 1 tackle, maybe 2 or 3 pass breakups, that doesn't tell the whole story about the game. Why? Because your production doesn't always show up in the stat sheet. That's how it is for Tuimoloau. Yes, by the numbers, I do think he needs to be more productive. That is not wrong. Last year, he had 38 tackles, 7 TFLs, 5 sacks. His 5 sacks last year are a single season high, just like the 38 tackles. The previous year, JT had 10.5 tackles for loss. And so I do know when you say, Jay, why does he need to be more productive? 1, it's needed. If you're a defensive end at Ohio State and you know what your role is, you know what Larry Johnson needs from you, and you have a better handle on Jim Knowles' defense, well, more TFLs is a need. Yes, now, teams are going to call plays to try to trip you up, knock you off your read, try to mess you up mentally. They're going to do those things. However, I do think JT can provide 1 more sacks, 2 more tackles for loss. I don't really care about the tackle number as far as, man, is it 38 tackles? Is it 60 tackles? I ain't going that far. I think 60 is high. I think 38 is a little bit lower than where he's going to be this year, even if the Buckeyes only played 13 games, which nobody around here believes the Buckeyes are only going to play 13 games. But JT Tuimoloau this year, paired with Jack Sawyer on the other side and with the guys on the inside and Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton, you got Simon back there at the Mike linebacker spot, and either Styles or Hicks is going to be at the weak linebacker spot. They're going to make Tuimoloau's job easier. Because one thing Jack Sawyer did at the end of last season is now going into this year, everybody has to pay attention to Jack Sawyer in a different way. Yeah, you knew what he might be able to do, or you thought you had a handle on what kind of player Jack Sawyer might be, but the last half of last season was not like the previous 6 games or any 6-game stretch that Jack Sawyer had at all during his time in Columbus. It wasn't like that when it clicked for Jack. What did you see? Oh, this is what everybody is saying Jack Sawyer can be. And we've seen JT Tuimoloau at his best. I believe it was a couple years ago in Happy Valley. I believe it was a stripe out for the Penn State Nittany Lions fans. And what did we find? JT Tuimoloau was active, had his hands in all 4 Buckeyes turnovers in that game, but he found a way. He figured it out. Now, that's one game. And many people in Buckeye land will say, oh, that's the JT that we get every single game. That's not true. That's not saying JT does anything as fall off completely, but that's just saying that's just one of those rare games. Like Jackson Smith and Jigba, Rose Bowl, or the 2021 season. That's rare. Granted, Utah's defense was not the same Utah defense that they had throughout portions of that year. However, what did you find? Maybe it was a 2022 season. 2020, maybe 2020. 2021 season, I think. Don't quote me on that. My brain kind of escapes me right now on the exact year. But you already remember that game that Njigba just went off. He went smooth off. I think it was 16 receptions, over 300 receiving yards. I forget how many receiving touchdowns, but he went off. He went smooth off in that game. And for Tuimoloau, he's had one of them games where he just went smooth off. The Buckeyes don't need him to go off like that every single week, but they do need more. Now, Tuimoloau this year, earlier this offseason, had media availability in the spring. And I went back and listened to that to try to figure out, hey, what is Tuimoloau? What are his goals? What is he trying to do? What does he want to be? What is he motivating himself right now to do in the fall? The season that's coming up right around the corner. He wants to be leaner. I think he's accomplished that goal based off of things, the way that I see, the way his body is right now. He wants to be twitchier. He wants to be quicker. But also, he wants to have that motor under me. That's a direct quote from him in that presser. Quote, having that motor under me, end quote. Now, that motor is something that everybody wants. Everybody wants to have that motor, but we have seen the motor in action. We have seen the motor when it's revved up, all the way up. We have seen that thing go so well, go so smooth, go in a way that nobody can stop him. Now imagine if Tuimoloau and Sawyer have their motor revved up all the way from Jump Street. You get out there during pregame warmups. Oh, before that. You arrive at the stadium. Oh, before that. When you get on the plane to go to wherever away game, or you get on the bus to go to the shoe from the hotel room, what do you find? You're already revved up and ready to go. And then game time starts. Oh, man. Wait, this is how we're going to start this game? Oh, okay, cool. It's going to be fun to watch. Why? Because that motor's been revved up. And the Buckeyes need JT's motor to be revved up. They need Jack Sawyer's motor to be revved up. This dynamic duo right here that Ohio State has at its disposal, it's going to be so much fun to watch. We got to see Jack Sawyer at his best last year. At the end of the year, Jack Sawyer ended the season, 48 tackles, 10 TFLs, and 6.5 sacks. It would not shock me if both guys are inching their way this year to be closer to 10 sacks apiece, or right around 10 sacks apiece, and that they have double-digit tackles for loss apiece. Why? Because I believe they're that good, and when their motor's revved up, it's going to be hard to stop either one of those guys, because this dynamic duo is going to be a whole lot of fun to watch. Now, speaking of these guys, we all believe their best year in Columbus is going to be this year because, well, some people's timetables have their best years earlier in their Buckeye career. Some have them later. And different timetables is one thing. The one thing about G. Scott Jr. and Kojo Antwi, they have different timetables, and there's nothing wrong with that. This episode is brought to you by Ibata. Sandals, sunscreen, and snacks for the kids. What do these have in common? You're probably buying a ton again this summer, but don't stress about the cost. Use Ibata and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all your summer essentials. Ibata is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibata user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. It's time you joined the over 50 million users who use Ibata to earn cash back every time they shop. Right now, Ibata is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibata by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibata app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every day. College football is back, and the Locked On College Football podcast kicks off the action with a live season preview at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, August 20th on the Locked On College 24/7 streaming YouTube channel. This four-part series covers each of the four major conferences with discussion on which ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, and SEC teams have a shot at the expanded college football playoffs. And of course, yours truly will be a part of this preview series talking about the Buckeyes and the noise they'll make this year. Be sure to check out this special streaming on Locked On College's 24/7 YouTube channel or on Amazon Fire TV, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We all know people out there that when they dive into a new field, they instantly get it. They instantly are all in, and they're instantly having success. At the same time, we also know people that it takes a little bit longer for them to grasp the thing that is in their new field. It takes them longer to figure out exactly how to navigate this new territory. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the guy that instantly gets it. And there's nothing wrong with people that take a little bit longer to get their feet under them, to get the grasp on the things that's right in front of them. And you know, when I think about that very scenario, I think about Ohio State players, a few of them whose timetable has been a little bit different than maybe you might think it would be when they came to Ohio State. Devin Brown, Kojo Antwi, G. Scott Jr., and Mitchell Melton are four guys in my head when I think about guys that have different timetables. Their timetables are all different. Their stories are all different. But that doesn't diminish what they might do when they wear the scarlet and gray, because having a different timetable, there's nothing wrong with that. We talked about earlier Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer and what they might do and what they should do this year in their final year in Columbus. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, not everyone's going to be a Marvin Harrison Jr. Not everyone's going to be a Jackson Smith-Njigba. Not everyone's going to be fill-in-the-blank former Buckeye or current Buckeye, a Denzel Burke, who was starting since day one. Not everyone's going to be like that. And we got to remember that there are going to be guys that it's going to take a little bit longer to develop, a little bit longer to get a handle on everything. Some guys even switch positions like G. Scott Jr. Some guys are hit with the injury bug like a Mitchell Melton. Some guys are just in multiple quarterback battles and they just can't win that thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But when their time comes, watch out. And specifically Kojo Antwi, because among these guys, Mitchell Melton, G. Scott Jr., Devin Brown, we all have heard a lot about their stories, about things that they can do, things they should do, why they are where they are right now in their Buckeye career. But Kojo Antwi kind of gets glossed over. When it's the backups at receiver, Jaden Ballard gets a lot of attention. Even a couple of years ago at the Buckeyes Pro Day, I believe Stroud was throwing that ball all around the yard, and Jaden Ballard caught numerous passes. He was one of those receivers catching balls from Stroud, and everyone said, I remember the narrative after that Pro Day, hey, Ballard might be that next guy. He might be that next receiver to step up and make noise in the scarlet and gray. Unfortunately, Ryan Day this year is still saying Ballard needs to stand up. He needs to step up. And I think he called him JB. Nicknames are great. I love nicknames. I'm a big proponent of nicknames. And if I can get one for you, that probably means that I like you. But Kojo Antwi has had to take a little bit of time. There's nothing wrong with that. And he's not hanging his head about, where he is right now in his Buckeye career. This is what the redshirt sophomore had to say about this topic. Quote, everybody's different. Everybody has a different timetable of how they develop and stuff. And I feel like I'm at that little inch spot, like right there. So I'm just going to keep developing and keep learning from the older guys like Emeka and stuff, end quote. Think about how mature it is for a guy in his situation, a third-year guy, to have his mind in that aspect and with that focus saying, look, man, everybody's different. Everybody has a different timetable. That's not normally something you hear in college football. Actually, normally what we hear in college football, hey, if you're a five-star, we expect big things from you at the latter end of your first year, maybe your second year. I mean, there's a lot of pressure put on five-star recruits. Now, maybe it might not be their first year. Maybe it might be their second year. But what are you going to find? Hey, people are already attaching massive, enormous expectations on you simply based on something that is done via a recruiting database. There are 4 of the major ones. And what do we find? A lot of the times, they don't line up. Is there a consensus every single year, number 1 overall recruit? No. Is there a consensus overall across the board, a number one overall best quarterback, number 1 the best running back receive? No, it's not that way. And so when you think about that and realize they're not all the same, they're not all dished up the same way you want them to be, what do we find about this time right now, about these guys, about these players? Yeah, they're good, but the recruiting databases aren't always correct. But also, they can't depict and tell you how they're going to translate to the next level. They can only evaluate you at these camps, things you do on Friday nights. They can only evaluate you in the games you do in high school. That does not mean that your game's automatically going to translate to the next level. And it does not mean you will not need a little bit of extra time to develop. And if your timetable is someone that says, oh, got to wait a little bit to get on the field, got to wait a little bit to develop. Maybe you're a person that eventually, maybe in year 3, maybe in year 4, you're saying, oh, I'm at that little inch spot, like right there. And you're saying, oh, man, I am so close. I am almost there. And for Kojo Antwi specifically, I think he is almost there. Think about what Ohio State has right now. A different receiving corp than they normally have. Yeah, they normally got dudes. Brandon Ennis, Jeremiah Smith, and Garno Tate are not your normal young receiver. They are not. In any other year, this might be a year where Kojo Antwi might not start, but he is maybe the 4th or 5th guy in rotation. Maybe he is a 5th. Maybe he's a 6th. What are you finding? He ain't part of that top 3. A lot of that is not because of anything he's done, even though he believes he's right there. A lot of it is just Ohio State's been fortunate to get some of the best receivers in the country for back-to-back years. And the guys are getting right now are a whole lot different. And that's okay. But for Mitchell Melton, Devin Brown, G. Scott Jr., and Kojo Antwi, they got different timetables. And y'all, there is nothing wrong with that. One thing I love right now is that Antwi has the right mindset about this timetable being a little different. I also love that Ohio State had the most AP preseason All-Americans. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Once again, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to download America's #1 sports book. Thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every day. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but the Buckeyes had 6 preseason AP All-Americans, which is the most in the country. They also had the most guys on the first team in the preseason AP All-American team, that with 4. Also, the most guys on that group as well. Most overall, most on the first team. We all knew this team was special. We all knew in the preseason there would be a lot of hype, but this just adds to it. The Buckeyes also have 7 preseason All-Americans right now. I don't know if there's any other publications that will be releasing their preseason All-Americans, and if they are, great, cool. That's great. Fine, keep it coming. Add some more Buckeyes to that list. But man, and there's one guy on this list once again that I am waiting to see what everybody else is seeing, because maybe I've missed something about what this guy might do this year. But the 4 first-team AP preseason All-Americans for Ohio State: Donovan Jackson, Emeka Egbuka, Denzel Burke, and Caleb Downs. To me, the two obvious ones are Burke and Downs. And I say obvious. Downs is obvious. Burke can go back or forth from first or second team, and it would not really bother me. Egbuka, once again, go back or forth from first or second team, really wouldn't bother me. The Donovan Jackson one is the one where I am trying to figure out if I was figure out what everyone else is seeing. If I was a part of the committee that was trying to put together the AP preseason All-American teams. Now, I do have the Ohio State point of view, as I do cover the team here. But however, I've heard national college football analysts be on the same page as me and say they don't really agree with Donovan Jackson being here on the first team. This is not saying he's a scrub, that he's horrible, that he's trash. This isn't saying any of that. This is just saying, based off what he's done in college football so far, they're surprised he's here. And that's where I say maybe I am missing something. Maybe the talk around the Woody, maybe the talk around college football in these circles is that Donovan Jackson's going to just blow up. I mean, just make a bigger name for himself, a huge name for himself at that left guard spot. Maybe that's what it is. I mean, even in the video game, he was one of the, top 100 overall players. And I'm sitting here thinking, I didn't think this was going to happen, but it did. So I'm just waiting to see what Donovan Jackson does here in the season. Second team AP preseason All-Americans, Travion Henderson and Tyleik Williams. There was another publication, I think it was CBS Sports, that had Quinshon Judkins as a preseason All-American, which comes into the 7 preseason All-Americans that the Buckeyes currently have. I think the Buckeyes right now, we think about the running back room, the top 2 guys. I mean, this is just more solidifying the things that we all believe about them. Henderson, Judkins, it shouldn't matter who you start. They're both together. They can split reps. If at the end of the day, one guy has 14 carries or 14 touches, the other guy has 11, am I really upset with that? Absolutely not. Figure the thing out. Figure out what works best. Figure out where each guy is the best for them. Let that thing ride. Just let it go. Just go ahead and make the noise there. And for Judkins and Henderson, I'll say it again. I know we're praising guys here, but they're both preseason All-Americans. There's multiple publications. So if you're All-American for one, you're just an All-American. I still think Judkins should start over Travion this year. Now, the issue is Henderson is a captain voted on by his peers. I don't think that's actually going to happen. I mean, the captain thing is heavily weighted. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think it's going to happen. But if it did, think about this. You're out there, Judkins, number 1, the first running back out there. And then all of a sudden you see split out, maybe 4th or 5th play in the slot. You got 3 receivers and Ennis and Tate and let's just say Jeremiah Smith. Let's say Egbuka's off the field for some reason. You got those 3 guys out there. And then all of a sudden you got Henderson in the slot and Judkins in the backfield. What does that do for an opposing defensive coordinator? Instant migraine. Instant nightmare. That's what it's going to be. So as much as I love Judkins and I'm really getting closer to buying in all in on Henderson and everything he does, even though there are some deficiencies, even with those errors in his game, that does not mean he will not do big things for the Buckeyes this year. Trust me. If that boy stay healthy with Judkins beside him, we're going to have a lot of fun this year talking about these 2 RBs at Ohio State. The offensive lineman of Donovan Jackson, as this unit keeps trying to have its own battle in the offseason, Donovan Jackson's a steady guy, the steady space. He's played the most ball amongst these guys. He knows what's expected. He's figured things out, and he can be a leader as McLaughlin, as Simmons, as whoever starts at right guard, and Fryer. If there's a guy that needs to be a leader, and it's the most veteran guy on the offensive line, that's Donovan Jackson. And Donovan Jackson, I'm sure, has heard the negative conversations, has heard the things that have been said about him, and maybe even read some of the things that have been written about him. He can use all of this as motivation. If he uses this as motivation to, motivate himself going into a pivotal year for him, his final year wearing the scarlet and gray, y'all better watch out, for Downs, for Burt, Abuka. They don't need no more. They don't need no more motivation. No. This could just concrete them and make it more concrete for them that, well, we are that dude. Okay, cool. Don't buy into this. This stuff can go right to your head and mess you up in season. I've seen it. Sure you have as well. Guys read what's out there. They listen to shows. They watch stuff, and they say, oh, man, y'all talking about me like I'm the best thing since sliced bread. Y'all talking about me like I can do no wrong. Y'all talking about me like I'm all of that in a bag of chips. Y'all talk about me in all these different amazing ways. Man, I like that stuff. I want to hear more of it. And as you hear more of it, your head gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So big that it just gets so big you can't contain yourself, and it messes you up when you're on the field. Don't let it get in your way. Don't let it interfere you. Don't let it make your ego so large that it messes you up on the field. You got bad reads, got bad steps, got false steps, and what are you finding? Your play is not the way that it needs to be. Donovan Jackson, Abuka, Burt, Downs, Henderson, and Tyleik Williams, congratulations for being AP preseason All-Americans, and I cannot wait to see y'all bust heads in 2024 in what should be, I've said it all along, I'm going to keep saying it, this should be a special season for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Thank you, everyone, for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On College Football Podcast. From NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're out of here on a Tuesday. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. We'll see you next time.